make it loud. And Jesus, we shout your name. Jesus, we make your praise glorious. You are glorious. My God, you reign forever and ever. How great your name, and your love remains forever and ever. You stay the same. Sing, shout it out, shout it out, shout it out. If you know He's good, sing it out, for the Lord is good. Shout it out loud, you are glorious, glorious. Shout it out, and glorious. Make it loud, and Jesus, we shout your name. Jesus, we make your praise glorious. You are glorious. Shout it out loud, you are glorious. We say glorious. Shout it out, and glorious. Make it loud, and Jesus, we shout your name. Jesus, we make your praise glorious. Shine, Jesus, you shine for all the world to see. You are glorious. Come on, we sing, shine, shine, Jesus, you shine for all the world to see. You are glorious. One more time, we sing, shine, shine, Jesus, you shine for all the world to see. You are glorious. Oh, you are glorious. We sing, God, you are glorious. Glorious. Come on, you sing. Shout it out, and glorious. And make it loud, and Jesus, we shout your name. Jesus, we make your praise glorious. You are glorious.
Good morning, Lee University. It's great to see you in chapel this morning. You can be seated. We've got a great morning lined up for you. This is the start of Homecoming 2020, and we are honored to have some alumni guests with us today. Amber Sharp is a 2012 graduate of Lee University. She is a physician's assistant and has been practicing medicine for the last 5 years in the Cleveland, Chattanooga area. She and her husband, Bryce, who is also a Lee graduate, are the youth pastors at Grace Community Church of God here in Cleveland. Eric Brown, a 2009 graduate, and Taylor Jones, a 2010 graduate, are co-founders of the creative agency Whiteboard. This award-winning agency helps visionaries lead meaningful brands, and they've had the opportunity to work with international corporations such as Chick-fil-A, Compassion International, and Q Ideas. Would you welcome our guests this morning? We're glad to have them with us. As you've noticed on campus, there are a lot of yellow umbrellas hanging on the Ped Mall, and here's a little video to tell you more about why those are there.
Ever wonder why there are bright yellow umbrellas hanging above the Ped Mall each homecoming? We wanted to create something fun and beautiful to represent something that is not only crucial, but long-lasting as well. Your engagement and support of Lee University and its students. Plain and simple, the yellow umbrella is an object lesson. An umbrella can protect us from the rain, sleet, snow, or it can be used on a bright sunny day as protection from the sun. The umbrella covers you when you're in bad weather, and it protects you from all kinds of things. Our Lee University alumni community does the same. An engaged alumni network allows the university to benefit from the skills and experience of our graduates by offering their support to our students, to the institution, and to each other. You are our most loyal advocates, our fiercest protectors, and the very best ambassadors of the Lee experience. So, every November, in the week leading up to homecoming, we hang happy yellow umbrellas from the trees lining the Ped Mall. We do this to remind our student body that they are covered, spiritually, financially, professionally. Someone has their back, and that someone is you. Those that came before have paved the way for those that are here now and those that are yet to arrive. A yellow umbrella says, we've got you covered.
Well, hello, everybody. Dr. Moffitt just introduced our guest, but this is Amber Taylor, and then furthest over there is Eric. Welcome back to your alma mater. Good to see you. Thank you for taking the time to do this. So Dr. Moffitt gave a little bit of your bio, at least kind of what you're doing now. So tell us a little bit more about that. What are you presently doing? And Amber, we'll start with you and we'll just go that direction, okay?
Sure, good morning. So glad to be here with you guys. So I'm a PA and I work in urgent care. I have done so for the last year and a half. Recently, I accepted a position with Simpa Community Care. It's a community outreach program or clinic in downtown Chattanooga. We do primary care, infectious disease, as well as preventative care, so like HIV, hepatitis C, etc. And that's what we're currently doing. He mentioned my husband and I, Bryce, who's also an alum. He and I have been the youth leaders at our church, Grace Community, for the last 3 years, and we lead them passionately. They are the next generation, and we're so grateful to do that. And we have a 2-year-old, and he is a handful, so that keeps us quite busy.
And what's his name?
Bryson Isaiah.
Bryson Isaiah. Mm-hmm. Call him Bryson or Isaiah? Which one do you go with?
It just depends on what he's doing. Sometimes both names, sometimes either or.
Yeah, my mom did that with me too. I understand. Tell us a little bit about your church.
Yeah, definitely.
Where's it located?
So it's off of Mouse Creek in Cleveland. I actually grew up partially in that church, and then when I went away from school, I tried other churches, and when my husband and I got engaged, we went back to the church, and shortly after that, they asked us, when we got married, would we be interested in the youth? The church is a smaller setting, but very diverse, very big and passionate about the nations around the world. So we do a lot of mission work, a lot of funding wells. We buy pastors' motorcycles in other countries so they can get to their different churches. So it's an amazing church, very small but very impactful.
I know you're probably always looking for youth leaders, right?
Yeah.
So if some of you are still looking for a church home, a place to get involved, check out her church. Taylor, what's going on with you guys? You guys are kind of connected somehow, right?
We are a little connected, and I feel a little bit at home being up here. I have to say the chapel band has made leaps and bounds of advancements since I played lead guitar, not nearly as good as this guy. So wherever he is, kudos to the guy shredding on the guitar this morning. And thank you, Amber, for your service during the pandemic and helping keep us all safe. We're all very grateful for that. So Eric and I, we have a long history with Lee, roommates, and we'll unpack this, I'm sure. But we started a creative agency right around the time of graduation. Eric was kind of going one way, I was going a different way, and we started a creative agency together. We opened it in Chattanooga, and since then, as Dr. Moffat mentioned, we've been able to work with some really huge brands in the world, which has totally not been the trajectory either of us thought we would ever be on. We don't say that out of pride. We say that because God has given a lot of favor and opportunities to walk into. And so now we have offices in 3 cities, Chattanooga, Atlanta, Nashville. We're continuing to grow. We have a pretty sizable staff. And that's what we spend a lot of our time doing. I lived in Chattanooga for almost a decade. My wife and I recently moved back to Georgia because we have a 3-year-old and all of our family lives in one town, and there's no substitute for free babysitting. So right. Just, for those of you out there working on that part of your life at some point, there's no substitute for free babysitting and the freedom and flexibility that brings, and it's a pleasure. So I'll let you color in the details.
Absolutely. Well, I'm Eric Brown, and first I'm a husband to Katie, who I dated and married 2 weeks after I graduated from Lee, and Pastor Mark, as I know, did that ceremony. So, I'm going to try not to get nostalgic throughout this entire interview.
I kept telling him on the drive up, don't be old. Like, we used to laugh at people who would be old when they talked at Lee Chapel, so don't be old. They don't need us to be old.
It's very true. So, I am dad to Ella and Owen, who are 7 and 5, and am chief creative officer at Whiteboard. That we sort of started an experiment that's gone for 10 years of how do you leverage creativity and technology to advance the common good. And it's a big question because in a sort of cultural moment where the internet can be confused between a tool versus an identity, we do our best to actually craft tools that are meaningful and worthwhile, especially when it comes to the time that we all spend on these devices we carry around in our pockets. And so that sort of question has sort of led us over a 10-year journey where we lead a team of 25 throughout Nashville, Atlanta, and Chattanooga, but serve organizations all over the world of all shapes and sizes that are trying to navigate a new normal. And obviously, new normals look a little bit different in 2020 than they did in 2019, because basically your 5-year and 10-year strategic plans go out the window during a global pandemic.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, Eric made reference to me as Pastor Mark. I had the opportunity of being his pastor most of his life, and so I've known him a long time. He and my son were very close, and got to know Taylor when my son came here because you guys roomed together. So I got to know them a little bit. And my daughter Ashton was in the same, or not the same class, but the class after you here at Lee. I think you two knew each other as well. So I'm the old guy. I'm the one that's being old, so I can be old. But you mentioned too, because I know, Eric, when you came in discipleship ministries. Yep. And Taylor, you made reference, this was not the direction.
An accounting major.
And an accounting major.
I was 2 weeks away from being a CPA.
Is that right? Yeah. So how did you get in this field? What took you this direction you are now?
I'll go first. I think I fell in love with the internet, making websites and 14, 15 years old when there was a thing called GeoCities that I believe Yahoo created, that you could just make websites easy. And then ultimately, for Taylor and I, we actually started a ministry here together with a group of about 15 people that were all friends, that we would sort of go to various youth groups and organize these weekend events. And surprisingly, we needed to build a website for it. I had done the design, and our mutual friend, Micah Massey, I remember in the parking lot of Battle, was like, you need to meet my friend Taylor, he builds websites. And 2 weeks later, we found ourselves, Taylor was the only person at that time that had an iMac that was like, I remember walking into the dorm room, and it was this just window of glory then this was, I think most of us still had PCs at this moment and Dell laptops, and Mac was just starting to take over the world again. And we built a website that night.
You're sounding old.
That's true. And we built a website that night and really have been building websites ever since.
Yeah, when we were at Lee, Eric convened a group that we called Society Room. And, Eric and I developed a really dynamic friendship, and has a very much a prophetic imagination. He convened this group, sort of modeled after something called a Junto Society, back in the days of Ben Franklin and those founding fathers. But we had probably 15 of us that we would get together at 6:30 a.m., which is insane for college students, twice a month. We met in the presidential library and all other places, and we would just debate faith and culture and work and what these things meant. We had people from, business, from pastoral ministries, from theology, from sort of all the disciplinary areas. And that group really became a deep catalyst of friendship. Justin was in there with us. And we had some really serious debates. I mean, things were broken, including pride and feelings and physical things in the room, because we would argue so in depth about these, things we really didn't understand at the time. But that really led to just a catalyst of friendship. And we realized that at one point, as Eric said, I had a background from high school of doing some website development work, and Eric had this great imagination, and we would stay up till 3 or 4 a.m. working on creative projects together. And that's really how our friendship and partnership grew. But we had this other group of creative friends, filmmakers and writers, and I don't think at the time we realized quite how substantial it was, but I remember one day I looked at Eric and I said, at some point we're all gonna have to start paying our student loans. And people are gonna have to get real jobs. And what I know about most of my dad was a Lee alum, and most of the groups of friends is that they leave and they don't ever really talk to each other again until their 10-year, homecoming or whatever. But, how can we keep our friends? That was really the driving question. And I was like, well, so I'm the accounting guy. We got to pay them. That's the only way to keep our friends around, is to figure out how to pay them some money. So we
That
were
is
like,
a strategy, just pay for friends, right?
It sounds insane, but that was a conversation we had, and I was like, maybe we had this idea of maybe doing work together. It's like, if we can start an agency and just contract our friends to do stuff, we can keep talking to them. Yeah. And that's what's played out over the last decade, really, truly. I mean, our friendship turned into a creative agency. We employed a bunch of our friends for a long time. Some of them have gone on to take jobs at huge companies and organizations, and it was all, ultimately because we took that moment seriously.
Awesome. Amber, you graduated 2012, is that right? And then was it health science?
Yeah. I initially did a pre-med biology major because at the time Lee didn't have a PA track. They since do, which is phenomenal. Yeah. So I didn't even know what a PA was, and I had gone on a study abroad trip with the PA. Didn't know he was a PA. We went to Honduras with the science department. We were there for about 14 days, and we had a doctor, an ophthalmologist, which is an eye doctor, and then the PA, who was Brian. And we would rotate as the students with each one of them in our clinics in Honduras. And he did all kinds of stuff. He did procedures. There was a little kid one time that jumped off one of the sides of where we were posted up and had hit his head on the concrete, and he sutured him up, and he cut out little fatty tissue lipomas. He diagnosed. He did all this stuff. And so on the flight home, I happened to be sitting near him, and I said, Brian, why do we call you Brian instead of doctor? And he was like, because I'm a PA. I had no idea what a PA was at that time in 2010. And so Dr. Veenstra, if she's listening, I love you, Dr. Veenstra. She was one of my professors. And when I had come back from Honduras, I had this discussion with her, and she said, well, why don't you write me a comparison paper of an MD or a DO, which is Doctor of Osteopathic Medicine, holistic, versus PA and nurse practitioner. And I got interested in doing that. In the process of me researching to write, I found the school I wanted to go to. I applied. I mean, there was just a number of things, and I ended up having to change my major to health science to get the remaining courses that I needed for PA school, so.
But you came with a desire to be in some type of medicine, to be in some type of the medical field, correct? I mean, that's kind of what you're, okay. So we kind of got some different stories. I mean, you guys came with not intending to be doing what you're doing right now. You came, at least you were in that area. Yeah. You were in that field. That's what you were looking at. So, because we got a lot of students, obviously, who are in that same kind of situation. So how did your Lee experience, and you've gotten into it a little bit, So just expand on it a little more. How did your Lee experience here kind of shape you, move you towards what you are doing, or even more beyond that, just who you are right now in your life? So Amber, why don't you go ahead and just take that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. My Lee experience was very rich. I was involved in a lot of things, and if any of you guys are science majors out there, you may think that's crazy because organic chemistry and calculus and all those classes take all of your time, but I was determined that I was going to be involved. So I was in Parade of Favorites, and I was with the Image Step team, and I traveled with campus choir. I didn't do all these things at the same time. They were at different semesters and years. I came in as a cross-country athlete, so it was a very rich experience, which I think was a great part because Lee University is very conducive for offering a number of things that you can get involved with. And when I think about it, I think there's three major things that happens at this university, which I love. Number one, you get enlightenment. Part of that is our minor in Bible. You get enlightenment, whether you grew up in a church home, I grew up in the pew, as many would say, or you had no background at all. You get enlightenment, would you say, like in some of your courses and classes. You get expansion, number two. We're supposed to enlarge ourselves, enlarge our mind, enlarge our territory, and that's what happens at this kind of campus. And number three, you get enhanced. We all have talents and abilities and gifts that God has put on the inside of us that you had before you stepped foot on this campus, right? Things that you're good at or you're interested in, but this kind of place enhances those things. And then you can go out, and that's really where I was at. And I can look back and say some of my best moments, as well as some of my worst, were at Lee, but even the worst were part of my development of those three things, so.
I will go. I think one of the biggest things that most people don't know is Taylor and I and some friends of ours, Chris and Jennifer Hatzel, we would sit in the back of the Con Center with Dr. Jimmy Harper and Dr. Moffitt, and we had a 3 by 4 whiteboard that sat on an easel, and we would sort of instigate what a chapel service might look like. And that 3 foot by 4 whiteboard is the reason our name exists. So in terms of the Lee experience, I think about it every day because it's the name of our company. In terms of the idea of how to create and cultivate the future happened in that office. And it's still the playbook that we get to work in and operate in every day. As a discipleship ministry major and as an accounting major, plan C was never to create a creative agency together. But at the same time too, we did, and we love it. And to think about sort of the possibility, and what I learned at Lee was, and still continue to learn, is a few years ago we were top 2 for working with the education policy reform group in Washington D.C. And they called us to tell us we were in the top 2 of the agencies that we're looking at, and basically said they had a concern about our faith-based portfolio on our website, and they asked us if we could keep that faith-based perspective out of the work we would potentially do with them. And I remember in that meeting, Taylor just said one of those epiphany moments that I've cataloged in my mind, but he basically said, "Can I throw something back on the table?" In the sense that although you're asking us to believe something's impossible, which is education reform. Classrooms haven't changed in over 100 years. You're asking me to believe in the impossible. And they said, "Well, yes." And he said, "Well, because of my faith, I can actually believe in that mission too." My experience at Lee taught me that belief is a skill in the workplace and as a in vocational spaces always. And you see that in medicine. You see, it's somebody had to believe there was a vaccine that was able to be made this year in order for it to make it happen. Right. When you break that down into all facets of an organization, the top level might be a logo, and that's how sort of everybody sees it. It's the flag. But when you think about departments and what they believe, and then you see how much brokenness and cynicism sort of can take place underneath this sort of flag. But ultimately, the goal is always to pursue the same thing. And so for us, no matter what sort of boardroom or meeting we're in, we're always coming in from the posture that belief is a skill. And I completely learned that during my Lee experience.
Yeah, the belief is our number one core value as an agency, and we have leveraged that in every relationship. And I think that when I think back on the Lee experience, now we've interviewed hundreds of people from every university and college possible for roles in our company. The one, I think, main differentiator that Lee University offers is the possibility for richness of relationship that doesn't exist in a lot of other places. And I think, when I think back about our group of friends, as Eric is talking about, when we were meeting in Dr. Harper's office, I remember Dr. Moffitt used to walk around with a baseball bat. He'd get in these really passionate conversations. And there was some sentimental baseball bat that Dr. Harper had. We were always scared he was going to whack one of us in the head at some point. But luckily, we all survived. So, but Eric is right. That whiteboard on the easel in Dr. Harper's office, it was the start of our company. I mean, the name comes directly from those moments of when Chris and I were at a random thing eating lunch with Dr. Harper, and we just said, have you ever thought, we're a liberal arts school. Like I said, I played in chapel band. Chapels were dry, I'll just leave it at that. And you could sit in the top and see 2/3 of the students were studying, and this was a, passion movement, and Eric and I were deeply in that. We were like, have you ever thought, we're a liberal arts school, have we ever thought about bringing students into the chapel planning process? Like, we have all these creative people, and we weren't volunteering, we were just asking a question, and then it turned into the group of people who were doing that. And that richness, what came out of that was a richness of relationship. Yeah. And we've carried that forward in our work and how we think about our clients and our friends. Yeah. And again, having worked with people from a lot of great schools, we just closed a project with Yale, like we've worked with people from every place possible. Lee has a very distinct ability to create powerful relationships. Yes. And that is the thing you cannot take for granted in the experience here. If you come to Lee and you don't invest in relationship with other people, with your professors, there is a willingness in the culture here to give a relationship that does not exist in other schools. Yeah. And if you don't use that and take advantage of it, I was fortunate to sort of be accidentally pushed in that way. But if you don't take advantage of that, it's a real loss here. So I think that's my biggest take. But.
In a lot of ways, you three are describing something that in this particular semester with the challenge and the limitations and the restrictions that the COVID-19 protocols put in place, some of these students haven't been able to have the full range of what you're describing. And what I'm hoping is, well, first of all, that doesn't mean it hasn't been here. It's been here part of the semester. It's just been here in a limited fashion. But I'm hoping as well as students are hearing this, not just here in Conn Center, but anybody that's watching live stream, you're hearing what we're heading to. COVID-19 is not going to be around forever. The restrictions are going to lighten up. We are going to be able to have more engagement in the type of things that you're describing. At the same time, I do believe what you are describing is still here. We just have to work a little harder at finding those places and those opportunities we can make these connections. But the number one thing is faith is still here. Expansion is still here. All these things you talked about, the idea of belief, the idea of being able to engage and engage with faculty, engage with staff, whomever that can help be mentor, coach. Those things still exist. So I hope our students are hearing this as we continue to move through these difficult times. We've just got a few minutes left, just a couple of minutes. So real quickly, let me just throw this out there and ask you to respond quickly. You're out there. That's you sitting out there. Mm-hmm. What would you be telling yourself now? From where you are now, what would you be telling the self that sat out there where these students are sitting right now?
Everybody tells you not to work with your friends, and I'm thankful that I never listened to that. I think the idea that what you could do with your friendships and to take it a little bit seriously amid the pranks and amidst the fun and amid the laughter and amid the memories to be made. What could happen if you took a friendship seriously and carried it past this place when you graduate?
Yeah, you have this one window of opportunity that's unlike any other phase of your life. Because once you leave and you start your job or have a family, or the world starts putting responsibilities on you can't say no to. Right. And during this season, it's the one time where you have the liberty to acquire a tremendous amount of experiences. And that is what you should be doing right now. You should be seeking out every possible meaningful, productive experience you can, whether it's through, trips, it's through extracurriculars, it's anything that is a meaningful activity focused on advancing the common good. When I think about that practically, like if I'm looking at hiring graduates, the number one factor is experience. I have not looked at a GPA record in a single candidate I've hired out of 100 candidats because
But GPA is still
it still
important.
matters.
Taylor.
Let me be clear. It also can pay your way through school.
GPA is still important.
I'll take care of that, Dr. Walker.
What I mean by that, to be clear, I paid my way through school with a good GPA, so I'm all for the GPA part. But the counter is if that's the only thing you have, it does not bode great for you in certain careers. So you also need to get as many experiences as possible. I think that's the thing. Just, I invested in some. I wish I would have invested in more because every time, again, we have these crazy opportunities to walk in the C-suite boardrooms of Fortune 500 companies and counsel their executives. And it makes no sense. I want to be very clear. Like, I'm a hillbilly from Georgia. It makes no sense. Yeah. But the experiences we have are what lead to those moments. So to be sure, taking advantage of as much experience as you can build before you lose the opportunity to do that is something that I would say to my younger self.
Yeah. Just to piggyback on what they're saying and add a little bit of what Dr. Walker's saying, as a science major, you do have to have a good GPA if you're wanting to go into a medical program.
I remember my organic chemistry friends. They had no life for a good while.
Shout out to Dr. Brown. We appreciate him. We made it through. But just to sum it all up, I would say, along with what they're saying, enjoy the journey, okay? Sometimes with an achiever mindset, and you can come into college just trying to pass the next test and get to that graduation and get accepted into that program or that school. This goes with what they're saying. Create those relationships. Have balance, because you won't be able to do everything, right? But you can do a number of things with that opportunity in that window, he's saying. So enjoy the experience. My dad always says, don't forget to stop and smell the roses. As you're going along, the real journey is really where the growth is and the beauty. It's not the destination, although that's a great place, right? And I would also say, we have to have gratitude. You have to have gratitude. It helps you to stay humble. It helps you to remember, hey, I'm not as far back as I was. And whatever situation you're in right now, if it's a health situation, if it's a struggle with class, if there's a family situation, we know the world is going through a number of things. Don't ever get so stuck in where you are that you forget that this is just temporary. There is life outside of where this moment is in your life, no matter what it is. And God truly is working all things together for your good. And I promise, if you just stay the course, enjoy the opportunity, experience the relationships, and keep doing what you're supposed to do, when you get to that point, wherever that point is, you're going to look back and see how God orchestrated all these things for your good.
Can I add one quick thought? Sorry.
Yeah, but I was just going to say good preaching. Go ahead.
If you look at the landscape of culture in the world needs more people who truly know how to love. This is a huge missing component. And for those of us with a faith background in the church, there's an opportunity to be the people of love that has not always been done very well. And there's another sector of society that's trying to step into that. And we see that play out in our work all the time. People are hurting. They just need to be loved unconditionally. And I think that's the other part of belief that comes along with our work, that Christians from this university can do better. That's the thing we can do better than anyone else. And that's what we should be known for, is our capacity to love. And coming from a guy who doesn't naturally have a lot of empathy, that's a big lesson I've learned in a decade. It's just the importance of taking time to love and care about people and to do that, better than others.
Yeah.
That's great. Eric, Taylor, Amber, thank you so much. Please join me in expressing your appreciation to the three of them being with us today. Great, great job.
Thank you, Dr. Walker. And Amber, Taylor, and Eric, thanks for coming home today and helping us to kick off our homecoming weekend. We really appreciate it. For all the Lee family that's watching right now, I just want to invite you to join us this weekend for our live stream events. They are going to be great. So we'd love to see you virtually. And students, let's get the party started. Are you ready? Yeah, okay. Please, after chapel, immediately following chapel, meet me on the Ped Mall under the yellow umbrellas because the Office of Alumni Relations wants to celebrate you our future alums. We've got free homecoming t-shirts and alumni coffee mugs for you. So I'll see you in just a few minutes. Would you stand, please, for the college benediction? Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my redeemer.
Amen.
See ya.